Hello, dear ones. Father Peter John coming to you from All Saints Orthodox Church, and Cemetery, here in Bloomington, Indiana. Christ is in our midst. Today I'm talking about a very beloved American saint, Saint Innocent of Alaska, apostle to America, enlightener of the Alaskan peoples. When I was in Alaska, I used to love to take a pilgrimage to Sitka. I remember I went twice by boat and once by plane. And when one arrives in Sitka, you can't help but see the prominent cathedral, St. Michael Cathedral, in the very center of the city. Everything that you do, you have to go around St. Michael Cathedral, right there downtown in the center of everything. And of course, that's the way that it should be. Our life should be centered around Christ and the church. And that's the way St. Innocent designed it right there in Sitka. St. Innocent actually designed and built that church himself. He was quite a Renaissance man. I'll talk about a little bit more about that. But it was a joy to go there to visit that cathedral with the prominent bell tower and the domes atop the cathedral. It was just beautiful. And then just about a block down the road was his residence, which actually was his residence, was the local seminary, was the local orphanage, and I cannot remember what else they had there. But it was this basically giant log cabin, log house. And if I remember my facts straight, the Alaska Historical Society, or maybe it was the Alaska Parks Service, they bought this huge residence of St. Innocent for $1 because it was falling apart. The church couldn't afford to keep it up. They bought it for $1 and they restored it for $20 million to its original state. And so if you ever are thinking of going to Alaska, make sure that Sitka is on your itinerary. You won't want to miss the cathedral and St. Innocent's house. You can see his bed there. By the way, he was a towering man. I believe he was 6'4" or 6'5". He slept in a sleigh bed, and the sleigh bed was only 6'2". So he was an ascetic. He began as a married priest until he was widowed later in life and had children. Started his ministry in Alaska in 1823 at the age of 26 years old. He spent 45 years ministering to the people all over Alaska. He translated the scriptures into native language. He wrote a beautiful book called The Indication of the Way into the Kingdom of Heaven. And this little book, it's a treasure. It's the kind of book that if someone says, well, how do I be a Christian? That this is what they can read. It's not very thick, you can see. But St. Innocent really thought, how am I going to communicate the gospel and the spiritual life to the people of Alaska? How am I going to communicate it to a people who have never heard it before? And so he boiled it all down into this little book. It's like a handbook for Orthodox Christianity. It's like a beginner's catechism, and it is such a treasure. So we have some in our church bookstore, but you can get it online. It's not expensive, and it is a real treasure to have. So St. Innocent, among other things, he spent his life, this 45 years in Alaska, going from village to village, ministering there, serving liturgy, trying to learn and serve the liturgy in the language of the native people. I mean, there are so many different languages and dialects. It was a very difficult thing to do, but St. Innocent took this on, and he determined he was going to reach as many people as he possibly could. A true Christian, a true Christian missionary. Thanks be to God. One time there's this story, this 6'4" towering man is getting into his little kayak to go out into the waters and go and serve liturgy on the islands. And the people there in Sitka were begging him not to go. They knew, they knew the weather patterns, they knew the tides, they knew the time of year, and they said, this is not a good thing. If you go, you're not going to come back alive. And he made the sign of the cross, and he left with faith, and he said, I'll see you soon in God's time. And he went, and sure enough, after he had gone out and served and taken and heard confessions and given communion, eventually he made his way back, and the people saw him, and they considered this to be a great feat. for this big man in the little kayak to survive that trip. There are so many stories like that about St. Innocent, the things that he did and that he said, that he wrote. He was a scientist and an artist and a craftsman. He not only designed and built the church there, St. Michael's Cathedral in Sitka, he was also commissioned to build a big clock for a clock tower at a church down in San Francisco at one point. So he was well known and active. He spent the last 11 years of his life as Metropolitan of Moscow and truly lived his life in abandonment to Christ and in seeking to do the will of God. Saint Innocent, pray unto God for us, that all of us may have this same zeal to share Christ with others, to share the good news of the Lord and his church, and to encourage others to follow the way to the kingdom of heaven. Christ is in our midst. He is and ever shall be.